Hi everyone, this is Olga again, and here we're talking about self-development, growth, but most importantly, taking charge of your own life and really putting yourself first on your priorities list. So all things coaching, and today we're looking into one very specific aspect. So let's dive in. First of all, do you hear other people say these things, or do you say them yourself? Oh, I didn't have it that bad. I'm fine. I'll be okay. Can't complain. Oh, it's not that bad. It's actually one thing that was really a bit difficult for me to pick up when I first moved to UK, that in English, when someone asks you how you are, they're not really expecting an answer, it's just part of small talk. But my question is, how often do you give this conventional "I'm fine, thanks," even in a situation when you are talking to someone you're really close with and they really do actually want to know how you are, how's your day been, how you've been doing. There's just so much pressure to have it under control, to be okay, to get it together, whatever else, right? It's like part of our modern culture. Though I have to say, it does seem that it's changing these days, and there is a lot more talk of mental well-being, emotional well-being, taking time for yourself, recharging, etc. So things are changing, but we're not there yet. Showing that you struggle and sharing your struggles with others is still very much a taboo, and we're still avoiding doing it in any situation where we don't really feel safe to show any weakness. So why is this so? Let's look at the roots first. Number one, well, that's just the way we grew up. Our feelings were dismissed, so we learned that they're not important, and we learned to ignore and dismiss them ourselves too. And this is especially true for men. The toxic masculinity culture really tells all boys and men that showing weakness makes you less of a man. Like, you can't do that. And it teaches boys not to show emotions in a very brutal way, in a way that whenever you do show that you have feelings and that you have empathy, you're penalized, you're ostracized, you're bullied, whatever else. There is very strict, very brutal consequences for showing emotions for boys. Again, luckily it is changing, but for many men who are grown up now, this has been their reality growing up. Don't cry, you're a boy. Now, one important disclaimer here, I'm not suggesting to go and pick fights with your parents about how they traumatized you, or pick fights with your school or your teachers or whoever else the important adults in your life were. I don't suggest that. It's usually not very productive. What I'm rather suggesting is just noticing that the way we learned to treat our emotions when we were growing up is not the only way to deal with emotions. Reason number two comes from a slightly unexpected angle. People have empathy for each other, and when we are putting ourselves into somebody else's shoes, when we're trying to imagine what it would be like to be them, especially if something really bad has been happening to them or happened to them in the past, we feel like, well, our story is not that bad. The problem here starts when we are not just comparing and trying to understand how they could be feeling in the moment, but when we then jump to the conclusions that since our suffering is not as big as somebody else's suffering, it is not a suffering at all, and it is not important, and it does not deserve any attention from us, first of all. Reason number three kind of relates to the very first one. It's the general stigma that surrounds everything that connects to mental health. Seeking help, especially mental health sort of help, is still very much not the norm. It's still difficult, it's still hard. And if you need help, it's almost as if to say, I failed. I'm a failure. Something's wrong with me. It kind of plays it on its head. I'm struggling, I need help, but I can't seek help because that will confirm that I'm struggling and something's wrong with me. So it really leaves us in a very, very difficult situation. The last reason I'm going to mention, though I think if we dig further, we can find more, but the last one I'm going to mention is the race. We are all racing for success, for the American dream, British dream, Australian dream, wherever you're watching this. There is some sort of dream of success that's been sold to us, where we need to achieve more, earn more money, get that six-figure income or whatever figure income you need in your particular geographical location. But we are in a constant race. There is no time to be weak. There is no time to listen to your emotions. There is no time to take time off and recover from whatever previous experiences have been. There is no time to pay attention to how we feel. So we again continue to ignore our feelings, our emotions, our mental well-being. You might be thinking, well, so what? I've been fine all this time. Why should I be now trying to live in a different way? I don't want to become, someone who's constantly whining about how they feel. That's not quite what I'm suggesting. You don't have to live in absolutes. You don't have to go from never talking about your feelings to constantly talking about your feelings. There is lots of in between. But let's talk about the risks. If you're constantly, continuously ignoring your feelings and emotions and any kind of signals from your psyche to yourself, what could it lead to? The biggest one is probably, and the most obvious one, we lose touch with our feelings in general. We don't know how we feel. And it may sound okay, well, so what? But in severe cases, it can lead to health problems. And I'm not talking just mental health, but physical health as well. I think a lot of people have heard of emotional overeating. And the thing is that it happens before we can even realize we're feeling something. We've already eaten something. And extra weight can lead to health problems as well. And especially if you're eating it just so as not to feel, you're not even enjoying the food that you're eating. So it's kind of, what's the point? Same as if in your case, your way of dealing with emotions is a shopping spree, a nice little shopping therapy. Maybe not such bad consequences for your health, but probably not the best thing for your budget. So yeah, consequences can be there if you're losing touch with how you feel. The other risk is we also don't ask for help. We lose touch and our bodies and our minds can't last forever. So in the very severe case, at the end of it, we're hit with burnout, depression, anxiety, any other sort of thing, but in such an intensity that we literally have to put our lives on hold and figure something out because it's just not working anymore at all. In a less drastic scenario, it could just translate into you just in general feeling less. So you may be feeling less negative feelings, but you're then also feeling less positive feelings. So it is almost as if the brightness on your life is turned down. It's a bit more black and white than color. Again, nothing too bad, definitely not as bad as depression, but could be better, could be more interesting, could be more enjoyable. So what do we do with all of that? First step would be to start noticing. Not even necessarily noticing how you feel, that's step 2, but noticing when you're avoiding feelings or when you're dismissing your feelings. Just noticing those situations, noticing when it happens, what happens around it, what type of circumstances you are in when you are dismissing or avoiding feelings. And then once you learn to do that and you notice those situations, then you try to notice, well, what is it that I'm actually feeling? Especially if you use food or shopping as your emotion regulation strategy. When do you want to go on a shopping spree? When do you want to have another snack? What is happening? What is it that you're feeling at the moment? The next step would be, again, to make space for any feelings and any emotions. This video is way too short to go into emotion regulation strategies and how to live through your emotions and how to let them through. But very, very briefly, the thought that really helps me when I'm thinking about it is just accepting an emotion as a vibration that goes through your body. It's just a vibration that goes through your body. You don't have to act on it, but you also don't have to ignore it. It's just there. Like a wave that goes over the shore. If you're tiny and you don't have any gravity of your own, it can take you into the sea. You're like a tiny little sand dust. It takes you into the sea and you're gone. If you're a big rock and you're solid, you just let the wave wash over you and you're still there. It's just a vibration going through your body. If empathy is one of your reasons why you are dismissing your emotions because others have it much worse than you, so your sufferings are really not that bad and don't need any attention, then think of it that way. Empathy works for everyone. It's either there or not. There is no competition where empathy is a scarce resource that we only give to those who have it absolute worst. You know, they've just been hit with a nuclear bomb, then, you know, I don't even want to give examples because it can be brutal and can be triggering for many people. But think of the worst case scenario and like as if empathy is only available to those people. No, of course not. Empathy, there is enough of it in the world to go around. There's enough for everyone, including yourself. And your empathy is never complete if it doesn't include yourself. What else you can do is look for examples of people who are comfortable with their emotions, who don't seem to be thrown off by them and who don't seem to dismiss them. And it can be people you know personally. It can be characters you've seen in the movies or read in the books, doesn't matter. But whatever our brain can imagine, we can do. Basically, for our brain, it doesn't matter whether something is imaginary or happens in reality with us. To brain, it's exactly the same. That's why we react so much to the movies, for example, because there's a story and our brain relates to it as if it's happening right here, right there. If you can see more examples of being okay with feelings, of people going through their feelings in a nice, sustainable way, in an easy way, then your brain grasps that, okay, it's possible. There is another option. The way I learned to deal with my emotions growing up was only one way, and here's a different way, so I could try that. And the last bit here is look at people around you. Who are those people, and how do they treat emotions? Do they dismiss how you feel as well, or do they validate your emotions and make space for them? And do you dismiss their feelings, or do you make space for their feelings and validate how they feel? This is really important and can be very, very helpful because people around us can lift us up, but they can also drag us down. So you choose who you are around and you can create and attract the kind of environment that you want to be in and that will help you thrive. So this is it from me for today. I really wanted to make it nice and brief so that we just touch up a little bit on this topic, just a small overview. But I have two more topics that are very close and very related to this one, and I want us to look at those the next 2 weeks. So next time, we will be looking into why we are dismissing our needs and wants. And again, we'll look at the reasons and the risks and what to do about it. And the week after, we will be looking into why are we downplaying our achievements, but not just achievements in general, our skills, our strengths, our knowledge, everything. And all of those three topics, they all are very connected to our own self-value. How much do we value ourselves? How much space do we make for ourselves in our own lives? Because without self-worth, without knowing that we are important just because we are, not for what we do, but just because we're here, we are important in our lives. Without knowing that, we will never be able to put ourselves on top of our priorities list. And why I think that's important is, again, another story, and we'll talk about it some other time, but this is the only way you can really create the life that you want. If you know what it is, and if you really follow your heart, and if you know that you're worth it, that it's okay for you to have the life that you want. Anyway, I'm going into too many teasers of what more to expect on this channel. Please like and subscribe. There will be a lot of more content coming out. And I will be glad to hear your comments, what you've been thinking about. Are there any emotions you're dismissing or ignoring? And is there anywhere where you need more help? If you do have questions, please feel free to ask. I'm always there in the comments to help you and answer whatever as best I can. And thank you for watching. Stay well. Notice how you're feeling. It's okay to feel any emotion whatsoever, anything at all. What you do with it is a different question. And I'll see you all next week.